The November rain pelted against the windshield of Graham Alexander Whitaker's Mercedes as he gripped the steering wheel, his jaw clenched in frustration. Another board meeting had run late, and now Boston's evening traffic crawled at an infuriating pace. His phone buzzed incessantly with notifications from the development team about the Shanghai deal, a contract worth billions that demanded his constant attention. "Jenkins, reschedule tomorrow's morning meeting," he commanded through the car's Bluetooth system, his deep voice filling the leather-appointed interior. "I need to review the Asian market projections before we proceed." "Sir, Mrs. Whitaker, your mother, has already confirmed her attendance. She insists on discussing the Foundation's annual gala," his assistant replied, hesitation evident in his voice. Graham's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. Of course, his mother would choose this week to push her social agenda. At 36, he was still dancing to her carefully orchestrated tune, a fact that both irritated and exhausted him. The light turned green, and Graham accelerated, perhaps a little too aggressively. His mind wandered to the last time he'd defied his mother's wishes, 6 years ago when he'd married Alara. The marriage had lasted barely 2 years before crumbling under the weight of his mother's disapproval and his own inability to stand his ground. The memory still stung, a wound he'd buried beneath spreadsheets and acquisitions. The screech of tires jerked him back to reality. A delivery truck swerved into his lane, and Graham's reflexes kicked in. He yanked the wheel hard to the right, but the wet road offered no traction. The world spun in a blur of headlights and rain before his car slammed into the guardrail with a sickening crunch. When the airbag deflated, Graham found himself dazed, but conscious. Blood trickled from a cut on his forehead and his right arm throbbed. The accident hadn't been severe, but the impact had been enough to deploy the airbags and crumple his driver's side door. "Sir, are you all right?" A police officer appeared at his window, flashlight beam cutting through the rain. "An ambulance is on its way. You should get checked out." "I'm fine," Graham insisted, although the room was spinning slightly. "I don't need—" "Sir, it's protocol. With a head injury, you need to be evaluated." 20 minutes later, Graham sat in the emergency room of Boston General, his expensive suit wrinkled and spotted with rain, while a nurse drew blood from his uninjured arm. His phone lay silent. Jenkins had been instructed to handle the inevitable crisis his absence would cause at the office. "The doctor will be with you shortly," the nurse said, applying a bandage to his arm. "You're lucky it wasn't worse, Mr. Whitaker." Graham nodded absently, his mind already on tomorrow's meetings. He needed to get out of here quickly. The corporate world didn't stop spinning because of a minor accident. "I'll need to check your vitals once more before—" A child's desperate cough interrupted the nurse's words, followed by the sound of running feet in the hallway. "Room 3, we need a nebulizer stat." A familiar voice called out, and Graham's heart stopped. He knew that voice, had heard it whisper, "I love you," countless times, had heard it break when saying goodbye, but it couldn't be. The curtain to his bay was suddenly pulled back as someone reached for supplies, and there she stood, Alara Grace Monroe, his ex-wife. Her dark curls were pulled back in a messy bun, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She wore navy blue scrubs under a white lab coat, a stethoscope hanging around her neck. She looked older, more mature, but her warm brown eyes were exactly as he remembered them. Those eyes widened in shock as they met his. For a heartbeat, time seemed to freeze. "Alara," he breathed, barely audible. She recovered first, her professional mask sliding into place even as her hands trembled slightly. "Dr. Rodriguez needs me in pediatrics," she said to the other nurse, her voice carefully controlled. "Can you finish here?" Before Graham could say another word, she was gone, leaving only the ghost of her presence and the faint scent of lavender, her signature scent, in the air. Graham sat there stunned. 6 years of carefully constructed walls crumbled in an instant. Memories flooded back. Their first date at that tiny Mexican restaurant in Cambridge, where she'd laughed at his attempt to pronounce the menu items. Their wedding day, when she'd looked so beautiful it hurt to look at her, even as his mother's disapproving glare cast shadows over their joy. The last night, when she'd packed her bags while he stood there, unable to find the words to make her stay. Mr. Whitaker? A doctor appeared, chart in hand. Let's take a look at that head injury. But Graham barely heard him. His mind raced with questions. Ilara worked here? All this time she'd been in Boston? He'd assumed she'd moved back to her family in Arizona after the divorce. He'd never checked, had deliberately avoided knowing, because knowing meant feeling, and feeling was dangerous in his world of corporate takeovers and power plays. The examination passed in a blur. Minor concussion, sprained wrist, follow-up in a week. Graham nodded mechanically, signed the discharge papers, but his thoughts remained fixed on Ilara. As he waited for his driver to pick him up, the Mercedes had been towed. He heard it again. That terrible, wheezing cough. It came from behind, a curtain down the hall followed by a child's frightened whimper and Ilara's soothing voice. "It's okay, baby," she was saying. "Mommy's right here. Just breathe with me, nice and slow." "Mommy?" Graham's world tilted on its axis. "Mrs. Monroe," another voice said. "Noah's fever is still climbing. We should admit him overnight for observation." Noah. The name hit Graham like another car crash. He found himself moving closer, drawn by an inexplicable force. Through a gap in the curtain, he caught a glimpse of a small figure in a hospital bed. The child couldn't have been more than 5 or 6, with wavy brown hair and a thin face pinched with discomfort. Then the boy opened his eyes and Graham's heart stopped for the second time that night. He knew those eyes. He saw them every morning, in the mirror, the same unusual blue-gray shade that had marked the Whitaker line for generations. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. The timing, the eyes, the way Ilara had fled from his presence. This was why she'd left Boston, why she'd cut all ties so completely. She'd been pregnant. He had a son. The world Graham had built so carefully, with its corner office views and power lunches, its carefully managed emotions and controlled outcomes, shattered like safety glass around him. Nothing in his Harvard MBA had prepared him for this moment. In the distance, he heard his name being called. Probably his driver had arrived, but Graham couldn't move. He stood there, frozen, as the truth rewrote everything he thought he knew about the last 6 years. A small hand reached for Ilara, and she gathered the boy, Noah, close, murmuring soft words of comfort. The gesture was so tender, so natural, it made Graham's chest ache. This was what he'd missed, what his pride and weakness had cost him. Finally, he forced himself to turn away. He couldn't confront this now, not here, not like this. But as he walked toward the exit on unsteady legs, Graham Alexander Whitaker knew with absolute certainty that nothing in his life would ever be the same again. His perfectly ordered world had just collided with the ghost of his greatest regret, and in the wreckage lay a truth that would force him to face everything he'd spent 6 years running from. His failures, his fears, and the love he'd never truly stopped feeling for the woman who'd once believed in him enough to say, "I do." Ilara's hands shook as she charted Noah's latest vital signs. The pediatric ward's dim night lighting couldn't hide the tremors in her fingers as she wrote, nor could the quiet beeping of monitors mask the thundering of her heart. Graham was here. After 6 years of carefully constructed distance, the carefully maintained walls between their worlds had crumbled in an instant. "Mommy?" Noah's voice was raspy from his latest asthma attack. "Can you stay?" She turned to her son, forcing a smile onto her face. "Of course, baby. Let me just finish these charts." Moving to his bedside, she smoothed his wavy brown hair, so, like hers, while those eyes that haunted her dreams were all his father's. Noah caught her hand in his small one. Even burning with fever, he remained unusually perceptive. "You look scared," he whispered. "I'm just worried about you getting better," she deflected, pressing a kiss to his forehead. Still too warm. "Try to sleep, okay?" Once Noah's breathing evened out into the rhythm of sleep, Ilara slipped into the hallway. She made it to the staff break room before her composure finally broke. Sliding down against the wall, she pulled out her phone with trembling fingers. Pick up," she muttered as the line rang. "Do you know what time it is?" Her best friend Lucia's voice was thick with sleep. "He's here," Ilara whispered. "Graham. He saw Noah." There was a sharp intake of breath, then rustling as Lucia, presumably, sat up in bed. "What? How?" "Car accident, minor, but—" Ilara's voice cracked. "Lucia, you should have seen his face when he realized. I don't know what to do." "First, breathe," Lucia commanded. "Is Noah okay?" "Fever's still high. Dr. Rodriguez wants to keep him overnight for observation." Ilara pressed her free hand against her eyes. "What if Graham tries to take him away? His family has so much money, so many connections." "Stop," Lucia cut in firmly. "You're catastrophizing. Graham might have been weak when it came to his mother, but he was never cruel. Besides, you have rights. You've been Noah's only parent for 5 years. 6, Ilara corrected automatically. "I was already pregnant when—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "When he chose his mother over you," Lucia completed softly. "I remember." The memory rose unbidden. Graham's mother, Evelyn Whitaker, resplendent in her designer suit, cornering Ilara in the powder room during a charity gala. "Dear," she'd said, voice dripping with false concern, "you must see how this isn't working. Graham needs a partner who understands our world, our obligations. You're just making him choose between 2 lives he can never fully reconcile." A week later, when Graham had once again canceled their anniversary dinner for an urgent meeting his mother had arranged, Ilara had packed her bags. She'd been planning to tell him about the baby that night. Instead, she'd watched him stand there, silent and torn, as she walked out the door. A noise in the hallway snapped Ilara back to the present. "I have to go," she whispered to Lucia. "My shift isn't over." "Call me tomorrow," Lucia insisted. "And Ilara, remember who you are. You've raised an amazing kid on your own. Don't let anyone make you feel small." After hanging up, Ilara splashed cold water on her face and straightened. Her scrubs, professional, controlled, she could do this. But when she stepped into the hallway, her resolve was immediately tested. Graham stood there, still in his expensive suit, though it was now rumpled from the accident. A white bandage stood out starkly against his temple. "You should have told me." His voice was low, intense. Ilara glanced around quickly, grateful the hallway was empty. "You need to leave," she said quietly. "Visiting hours are over." "A son, Ilara." Graham's composure cracked, revealing raw pain beneath. "I have a son I knew nothing about for 6 years. 5 years and 4 months, she corrected, unable to help herself. "And yes, you do. His name is Noah Sebastian Monroe Whitaker. He's in kindergarten. He loves dinosaurs and space, and he has severe asthma that keeps landing him in this hospital." Graham flinched at the bitterness in her tone. "Monroe Whitaker? I never denied his heritage." Ilara crossed her arms. "I just protected him from it." "Protected him?" Graham stepped closer, his height forcing her to look up. "Or punished?" "Me? Punished you?" Ilara's laugh was hollow. "You think this was about you? I was 28, pregnant, and had just watched my husband choose his mother's approval over our marriage. What would you have done? I would have wanted to know." "Lower your voice," Ilara hissed, glancing toward Noah's room. "He's finally sleeping." Graham ran a hand through his dark hair, a gesture so familiar it made her heart ache. "I have rights. Legal rights you never knew to exercise because I never filed for child support or made any claims," Ilara pointed out. "I didn't want anything from you or your family. I still don't." "But Noah might," Graham countered. "He deserves to know his father." The words hit Ilara like a physical blow, because this had always been her greatest fear, that she'd made the wrong choice. That her desire to protect Noah from the toxic dynamics of the Whitaker family had deprived him of something vital. "He's not a business acquisition," she said finally. "You can't just walk in and take over." "I know that." Graham's voice softened. "But I can't walk away either. Not now. Not ever again." A monitor alarm beeped from down the hall, and Ilara straightened. I have to go. My patients need me. Ilara, wait. Graham reached for her arm but stopped short of touching her. Have dinner with me tomorrow. We need to talk about this properly. I don't date patients, Mr. Whitaker, she said coolly. I'm not asking for a date. I'm asking for a chance to understand my son's life. He pulled out a business card and held it out. Please. Ilara stared at the card. Thick cream stock, embossed letters, the weight of power and privilege in paper, form. Everything she'd walked away from 6 years ago. Fine, she said finally, taking the card. But not tomorrow. Noah needs to be fully recovered first. I'll call you. Graham nodded, and for a moment, she saw a flash of the man she'd fallen in love with, the one who existed beneath the corporate armor and his mother's expectations. Then he straightened, mask falling back into place. I'll wait, he said simply. But not forever. Ilara watched him walk away, his slightly unsteady gait the only sign of his earlier accident. Once he disappeared around the corner, she leaned against the wall, pressing her hand against her chest where her heart beat a painful rhythm. In Noah's room, the monitors beeped steadily, marking the rhythm of her son's breathing. She moved to his bedside, studying his sleeping face. He looked so much like Graham when he slept. The same serious set to his mouth, the same long eyelashes. I'm sorry, baby, she whispered, though she wasn't sure exactly what she was apologizing for. For keeping him from his father? For not being brave enough to fight harder 6 years ago? For the storm she knew was coming? Noah stirred slightly, mumbling something about rockets in his sleep. Ilara smiled despite her turmoil. Her son, their son, was the best of both of them. Graham's determination, her compassion, their shared curiosity about the world. Maybe that was why she'd given him the Whitaker name, even if only as a hyphen. Some part of her had always known this day would come, had perhaps even hoped for it in the secret corners of her heart where first love never truly dies. The night stretched ahead full of uncertainty, but as Ilara settled into the chair beside Noah's bed, she made herself a promise. Whatever happened next, whatever Graham's reappearance meant for their carefully ordered life, she would face it with the same strength that had carried her through the last 6 years. After all, she wasn't just Ilara Grace Monroe anymore. She was Noah's mother, and that made her stronger than any fear, any regret, any lingering echo of the love she'd never quite managed to forget. Graham sat in his home office staring at the Boston skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. Dawn painted the glass towers in shades of pink and gold, but he hadn't slept. Instead, he'd spent the night diving into a digital rabbit hole, searching for every trace of the life he should have known about. His laptop displayed a school website, Brighton Elementary. Noah's kindergarten class had recently won a science fair with their project about the solar system. In the group photo, Graham spotted him immediately, a small figure in a NASA t-shirt holding a model of Jupiter. His son. The word still felt foreign, shocking, miraculous. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Mr. Whitaker. Jenkins entered, looking concerned. The board is expecting you in 30 minutes. Should I have them reschedule? Graham checked his reflection in the window. The cut on his temple was barely visible now, but dark circles shadowed his eyes. No, he said firmly, but clear my afternoon. And, Jenkins, I need you to find me the best family lawyer in Boston. Discreetly. Sir? Jenkins hesitated. Your mother called. 3 times. She's quite insistent about discussing the gala. Not now. Graham's tone left no room for argument. For the first time in his adult life, his mother's demands seemed utterly insignificant. The morning passed in a blur of meetings and conference calls. Graham moved through them on autopilot, his mind constantly drifting to the hospital, to Noah's, fevered face to Ilara's defensive stance as she protected their child from him. By noon, he couldn't take it anymore. He left the office without explanation and drove to Brighton Elementary. The school was a cheerful brick building with children's artwork decorating the windows. Graham parked across the street watching as kids played during recess. "Can I help you?" A security guard approached his car, expression suspicious. Graham rolled down his window, adopting his most professional demeanor. "I'm looking for information about enrollment procedures." "Office scene?" "Is around the corner," the guard said. "Can't have people watching the playground, sir. I'm sure you understand." Graham did understand, and the realization hit him hard. He was a stranger here, a stranger to his own son's world. Back in his car, he pulled out his phone and opened the hospital website. Ilara's professional profile was there. Ilara Monroe, RN, BSN, head nurse, pediatric unit. The photo showed her in scrubs, smiling warmly at the camera. She looked confident, accomplished, a far cry from the young woman his mother had once dismissed as unsuitable. His phone buzzed, an incoming call from Mother. Graham declined it, something he'd never dared to do before. Instead, he pulled up the photos he'd downloaded from Brighton Elementary's public gallery. Science fairs, field trips, holiday concerts, 5 years of memories he should have been part of. The sound of children's laughter drew his attention back to the playground. A group of boys Noah's age played with toy rockets, their excitement visible even from a distance. Did Noah play like that when he wasn't sick? Did he have many friends? What was his voice like when he wasn't hoarse from coughing? Graham started, the car suddenly unable to bear being an observer in his son's life for one more minute. He drove to Boston General, parking in the visitor's lot. The pediatric floor was quieter now than it had been last night, sunlight streaming through large windows. He found Noah's room easily, but stopped short in the doorway. The bed was empty, freshly made. A nurse was removing the monitoring equipment. "Excuse me," Graham's voice cracked slightly. "The patient who was here? Noah Monroe Whitaker?" "Discharged about an hour ago," the nurse replied. "His fever broke this morning and Dr. Rodriguez cleared him to go home." Home. Another place Graham had never been. "Mr. Whitaker." Dr. Rodriguez appeared behind him, a middle-aged man with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. "I thought I might see you here." Graham turned, surprised. "You know who I am?" "I've been Noah's doctor since he was born," Dr. Rodriguez said quietly. "And I knew you 6 years ago when Ilara first came to work here. She never said anything, but—" He gestured to his own eyes, then mimed looking at a baby. "Some things are hard to miss." Graham swallowed hard. His asthma, how serious is it? Manageable with proper medication and care which he receives. Ilara is an excellent mother. The doctor's tone carried a subtle warning. She's given that boy everything he needs. "Almost everything," Graham said softly. Dr. Rodriguez studied him for a long moment. "Noah's next checkup is in 2 weeks, Tuesday the 15th, 2 p.m. He held Graham's gaze meaningfully. "Just in case you were wondering." Graham nodded, understanding, the gift of information for what it was. "Thank you." Back in his car, he finally listened to his mother's voicemail. Her cultured voice filled the space, talking about seating arrangements and social obligations. Graham ended the message halfway through and did something he'd never done before. He drove to his mother's house in Beacon Hill without calling ahead. The housekeeper looked startled to see him, but directed him to the conservatory. Evelyn Whitaker sat in her favorite armchair, a stack of charity gala invitations before her. She looked up as Graham entered, her perfect posture and immaculate appearance unchanged by time. "Darling, I've been trying to reach you. These responses simply won't do for the—" "I saw Ilara last night," Graham interrupted. His mother's, hand stilled on the papers. "I wasn't aware she was still in Boston." "She's a nurse, at Boston General." Graham moved closer, watching his mother's face. "She was there when I had my accident." "Yes, Jenkins mentioned you had a fender bender. Really, darling, you must be more careful with—" "I have a son." The words fell into the room like stones into still water. Evelyn's face went very still, only a slight tightening around her eyes betraying her reaction. "I see," she said finally. "Did you know?" Graham's voice was dangerously quiet. "When she left, did you know she was pregnant? Would it have changed anything?" Evelyn set down her pen. "You weren't ready for a child then. You were just starting to show real promise in the business world. A baby with her would have derailed everything we'd worked for." "Everything you'd worked for," Graham corrected. "My son is 5 years old, Mother. He has asthma. He loves space and dinosaurs. He's been in and out of the hospital, and I never knew. I never knew." Graham. His mother's voice took on the reasonable tone he'd heard so many times before. "Whatever. You're thinking, remember that you have responsibilities. The company." "His name is Noah Sebastian," Graham cut in, "and he has my eyes." Evelyn flinched slightly at that. The Whitaker eyes were legendary in their social circle, a mark of breeding his mother had always been proud of. "What do you want from me?" she asked finally. "Nothing." Graham straightened to his full height. "For the first time in my life, absolutely nothing. I'm not here for your approval or your advice. I'm here to tell you that things are going to change. You can't seriously be thinking of disrupting your life for my son." Graham's voice cracked like a whip. "He's my son. And Alara. She did what you forced her to do. She protected him from us, from this." He gestured around the perfectly appointed room. "From the poison of always being judged, always being found wanting." "I did what was best for you," Evelyn protested. "No." Graham felt something break free in his chest. A chain he'd carried so long he'd forgotten its weight. "You did what was best for you. But that stops now." He turned to leave, then paused at the door. "The gala committee will need to find a new chairman. I'm going to be busy learning how to be a father." His mother called after him, but Graham kept walking. Out of the house, down the manicured steps into the bright afternoon sunlight, his phone buzzed with a text message. "Unknown number. Noah's feeling better. We should talk. Dinner tomorrow?" Graham's hands shook slightly as he saved Alara's number. For the first time since last night's accident, he felt like he could breathe properly. He typed back, "Name the time and place, I'll be there." Then he did something else he'd never done before. He canceled all his meetings for the next day. Whatever happened at dinner with Alara, it would be the most important meeting of his life. Because somewhere in Boston, a little boy with his eyes was feeling better. A little boy who liked space and dinosaurs. A little boy who deserved more than being a secret or a shame or a disruption. A little boy who deserved a father. Alara stood in front of her bedroom mirror, questioning her choice of outfit for the third time. The simple navy blue dress was professional enough for a serious discussion, but nice enough for the upscale restaurant Graham had suggested. Her curls were loose tonight, framing her face the way they used to when... No, she wouldn't go there. "Lucia, I don't know about this." She spoke into her phone, which lay on the dresser. "Maybe we should meet somewhere more casual." "The restaurant is perfect." Lucia's voice crackled through the speaker. "Neutral territory, public enough to keep things civil, private enough to talk. Besides, you look amazing in that dress." "How did you?" "Because I know you, and I know that's the dress you wear when you need armor." There was a pause. "How's Noah?" Alara glanced toward her son's room where he was happily playing with his babysitter, Carmen. "Better. The new medication Dr. Rodriguez prescribed seems to be helping. He's been asking questions, though." "About Graham?" "About why the man at the hospital looked at him so strangely." Alara sighed, adjusting a curl. "He's too observant for his own good sometimes." "Like his mother," Lucia said softly. "Are you really ready for this?" Before Alara could answer, Noah appeared in her doorway, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur. "Mommy, you look pretty." "Thank you, baby." She knelt to his level, straightening his slightly rumpled t-shirt. "Remember what we talked about? Mommy has an important dinner meeting, but Carmen will make spaghetti and watch space documentaries with me," Noah finished. His blue-gray eyes, so like Graham's, studied her face. "Is it with the man from the hospital?" Ilara's heart clenched. "Yes, honey. He's someone Mommy used to know. We need to talk about grown-up things." Noah nodded solemnly. "Is he? Why? You look worried?" "I'm not worried," Ilara lied, smoothing his hair. "I just want you to have fun with Carmen, okay?" After one final hug and several reassurances to both Noah and Carmen, Ilara found herself driving downtown. The restaurant Graham had chosen was in the financial district, La Maison Azur, where they'd had their first anniversary dinner 6 years ago. The significance of the choice wasn't lost on her. Graham was already there when she arrived, standing just inside the entrance. He wore a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than her monthly rent, but his usual corporate polish was somewhat diminished by the obvious tension in his shoulders. "You look beautiful," he said quietly as she approached. "This isn't a date," Ilara reminded him, ignoring the way her pulse jumped at the compliment. "No," Graham agreed. "It's much more important than that." The maitre d' led them to a private corner table, partially screened by elegant dividers. Graham ordered a bottle of wine, the same Bordeaux they'd shared on their anniversary, Ilara noticed. But she requested water instead. "I'm on call," she explained. "The hospital always needs backup coverage." "Always taking care of everyone," Graham murmured. "Some things haven't changed." Ilara met his gaze steadily. "A lot of things have changed." They ordered their meals. Intense silence. Once the waiter left, Graham pulled out a leather portfolio and placed it on the table. "What's that?" Ilara asked, though she had a sinking feeling she knew. "Information from my lawyer about father's rights in Massachusetts." He held up a hand as she started to protest. "I'm not threatening legal action, Ilara. I just needed to understand where we stand." "Where we stand?" Ilara's laugh was bitter. "We stand exactly where you left us 6 years ago, Graham. Only now there's a little boy involved who doesn't need his world turned upside down because you suddenly feel guilty." "This isn't about guilt." Graham's voice was raw. "This is about my son, our son, who has my eyes and your smile and loves space so much he wore a NASA shirt to his science fair." Ilara's hand trembled as she reached for her water. "You've been checking up on him." "Of course I have. I've missed 5 years of his life. I'm trying to catch up." He leaned forward. "Tell me about him, please." The please undid her. "Graham, Alexander Whitaker didn't say please to anyone except when he truly meant it." "He's smart," she found herself saying. "Too smart sometimes. He asks questions about everything. Last week he wanted to know why the sky is darker in space than on Earth. He wasn't satisfied until we looked up actual scientific explanations." Graham's smile was painful in its pride. "He gets that curiosity from you." "He gets a lot of things. From you too," Ilara admitted. "The way he furrows his brow when he's concentrating. How he always needs to understand the why of things. His determination. When he decided he wanted to learn about constellations, he made me read astronomy books every night for a month." "I want to know him," Graham said softly. "I want to be part of his life." "It's not that simple." Ilara set down her glass. "You have a whole other life, Graham. Board meetings, social obligations, your mother's—" "I told her," he interrupted, "about Noah. Yesterday." Ilara felt the blood drain from her face. "You what?" "She needed to know that things are changing. I'm changing." His hand moved across the table, not quite touching hers. "I've spent 6 years trying to be the son she wanted, the CEO everyone expected. But the moment I saw Noah, I realized none of that matters compared to being the father he deserves." "Pretty words," Ilara said, though her voice shook. "But what happens when your mother starts interfering? When she decides Noah needs to attend the right schools, meet the right people? When she looks at him and sees another generation to mold into her image of perfection?" "She won't," Graham's voice hardened. "Because this time, I won't let her. Like you didn't let her 6 years ago?" The words hung between them, heavy with shared pain. Their meals arrived, providing a momentary reprieve from the tension. "I was wrong," Graham said finally, pushing his barely touched food aside. "I was a coward who let my mother dictate my life because it was easier than standing up to her. I lost you because of it. But I won't lose Noah, too." "He's not yours to lose," Ilara pointed out. "He doesn't even know you exist." "But he could." Graham pulled out his phone, showing her a photo. "Look." It was Noah at the science fair, beaming at the camera, his project about Jupiter displayed proudly. "Where did you get this?" "School website. Public gallery." Graham scrolled through. More photos. He won the class reading contest in September. He played a star in the winter concert. He helped plant the school garden in spring. "I've learned more about my son in 2 days than some fathers learn in years, but it's not enough. I want to be there for the next science fair, the next concert, the next time he's sick and scared in a hospital bed." Tears pricked at Ilara's eyes. "You can't just walk into his life and—" "I know," Graham cut in gently. "I know it has to be slow, careful, on your terms. But please, Ilara, give me a chance to be his father." The raw honesty in his voice made her chest ache. She thought of Noah's questions about his father, carefully asked and gently deflected over the years, thought of how his eyes lit up when he saw other kids with their dads at school events. "We'd need rules," she said finally. "Boundaries." Hope blazed in Graham's eyes. "Anything. No unsupervised visits until Noah is comfortable with you. No telling your mother where we live. No lawyers or legal threats, and if you ever put him through what you put me through, I'll take him so far away you'll never find us." "I understand." Graham's voice was solemn. "I won't let either of you down again." Ilara took a deep breath. "He has a checkup next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Dr. Rodriguez already told you, didn't he?" Graham had the grace to look sheepish. He might have mentioned it. "You can come," Ilara said, as a first step. "But Graham," she met his eyes firmly, "this isn't about us. Whatever happened between us stays in the past. This is about Noah." "Agreed," Graham said, though something flickered in his eyes that made Ilara's heart beat faster. "Noah comes first." As they finished their meals and prepared to leave, Ilara found herself studying Graham. He looked the same on the surface, handsome, powerful, controlled. But there was something different in his bearing, a new vulnerability in the way he looked at her. "Thank you," he said as they reached their cars, "for giving me this chance." Ilara nodded, not trusting herself to speak. As she drove home, her mind raced with questions and doubts. Had she made the right decision? Was she opening Noah up to heartbreak? Was she opening herself up to— No, this wasn't about her heart. This was about her son, who deserved to know his father, even if that father came with complicated emotions and an even more complicated past. When she got home, she found Noah asleep on the couch, his dinosaur clutched tight, a documentary about Mars playing softly on the TV. Looking at him, Ilara saw what she always saw, the perfect blend of herself and Graham, a miracle she'd carried alone for too long. Maybe it was time to share that miracle with the one person who had an equal right to love him, even if that meant risking her own carefully guarded heart in the process. Tuesday arrived with the weight of destiny. Graham paced his office, checking his Patek Philippe watch for the 10th time in as many minutes. 1:15 p.m. He'd cleared his entire afternoon, something that had sent ripples of shock through the corporate office. "Sir?" Jenkins appeared in the doorway. "The board members are asking about the Shanghai presentation." "You have my notes," Graham replied, adjusting his tie. He'd changed it 3 times already. "Handle it." "And your mother called again. She's quite insistent about—" "Not now, Jenkins." Graham grabbed his coat. "Not today." The drive to Boston General felt simultaneously too long and too short. Graham parked in the visitor's lot at 1:45 p.m., his heart thundering against his ribs. He'd faced hostile takeovers with less anxiety than he felt walking into the pediatric wing. Ilara was already there, wearing scrubs under her white coat. She'd worked the morning shift, she'd explained in her brief text confirming the appointment. Noah sat beside her in the waiting room, legs swinging, absorbed in a book about planets. Graham's breath caught. In the harsh fluorescent lighting, the resemblance between them was even more striking. Noah had Ilara's delicate features and warm complexion, but the set of his jaw, the serious concentration in his eyes, those were pure Whitaker traits. "Remember what we talked about?" Ilara was saying softly to Noah. "Dr. Rodriguez wants someone else to sit in on your checkup today. Someone who's very interested in helping you feel better." Noah looked up, his blue-gray eyes meeting Graham's directly. There was no fear in that gaze, only curiosity, the same analytical look Graham saw in the mirror every morning. "You're the man from last week," Noah said, his voice clear and surprisingly articulate for a 5-year-old. "When I was sick." Graham moved closer, fighting to keep his voice steady. "That's right, I'm Graham. Why were you looking at me that night?" The directness of the question, so innocent yet so penetrating, made Graham's chest tight. Ilara touched Noah's shoulder. "That's part of what we need to talk about, baby. But first, let's let Dr. Rodriguez check you out, okay?" The examination room was cheerfully decorated with space-themed murals, rockets soaring past planets, astronauts floating among stars. Noah climbed onto the examination table without hesitation, clearly comfortable in this environment. Dr. Rodriguez entered, his kind eyes taking in the scene. "Well, look who's here for your checkup, Noah. Quite a full house today." The doctor's examination was thorough but gentle. He listened to Noah's breathing, checked his peak flow measurements, and reviewed his medication schedule. Through it all, Graham stood slightly apart, absorbing every detail with fierce intensity. "Your breathing sounds much better," Dr. Rodriguez announced. "The new medication seems to be working well. Any questions for me?" Noah raised his hand solemnly, as if in school. "Can I play soccer this year?" The question hit Graham like a physical blow. Such a normal childhood desire, one he should have known about. "With proper medication and monitoring, I don't see why not," Dr. Rodriguez smiled. "But you'll need to. Be careful about cold weather and know when to take breaks." "I'll watch him," Ilara promised, then glanced at Graham. "We'll watch him." After the examination, they moved to Dr. Rodriguez's office. Noah sat between Ilara and Graham, still clutching his book about planets. "Noah," Ilara began carefully, "remember how you've asked me sometimes about your daddy?" The boy nodded, his small fingers tightening on his book. "You said he had to go away before I was born." Graham's throat constricted. The simple childhood understanding of his absence was like a knife to his heart. "That's right," Ilara continued. "But sometimes when people go away, they can come back, if they want to be part of your life again, and if they're ready to be good for you." She took a deep breath. Graham is your father, Noah." The words hung in the air. Noah turned those eerily familiar eyes to Graham, studying him with an intensity that belied his years. "Is that why we have the same eyes?" he asked finally. Graham nodded, not trusting himself to speak. "And is that why you were looking at me that night? Because you didn't know about me before?" "Yes," Graham managed. I didn't know, but now that I do, I want to know you, Noah, if that's okay with you." Noah considered this with remarkable gravity for a 5-year-old. "Do you like space too?" The question, so unexpected and yet so perfectly childlike, made Graham's eyes burn. "I do. Although I bet you know more about it than I do." "I know lots," Noah said, a hint of pride creeping into his voice. "Want to see my favorite planet?" He opened his book, finding a page about Jupiter. "It has 79 moons, that's more than any other planet, and see this spot?" He pointed to the great red spot. "It's a storm that's been going for hundreds of years." Graham leaned in, hyper-aware of how close this brought him to his son. "That's amazing. What else can you tell me about it?" For the next 15 minutes, Noah enthusiastically shared his knowledge about Jupiter, solar storms, and space exploration. Graham drank in every word, noting how Noah's hands moved expressively like Alara's when he was excited, how his speech pattern had the same subtle cadence as hers. "Noah," Dr. Rodriguez interjected gently when there was a pause, "how would you feel about spending some time with your father? Getting to know each other better?" Noah looked at Alara first, a gesture that spoke volumes about their bond. When she nodded encouragingly, he turned back to Graham. "Could we go to the Space Museum?" "The Museum of Science," Alara explained. "He's been asking to see their new planetary exhibition." "I'd love that," Graham said quickly. "If it's okay with your mom, maybe we could go this weekend, all three of us?" The all three of us part was a careful addition, respecting the boundaries Alara had set. Her slight relaxation showed he'd made the right choice. "Can we, Mommy?" Noah's eyes lit up. "They have a real piece of Mars there." "Saturday," Alara agreed. "But remember, you have to use your inhaler before we go, and tell us right away if you start feeling tired." As they prepared to leave, Noah surprised everyone by taking Graham's hand as well as Alara's while walking to the parking lot. His small fingers felt impossibly precious in Graham's grasp. "Thank you," Graham said softly to Alara over Noah's head. She met his eyes briefly. "He deserves to know you. The real you, Graham. Not the CEO, not your mother's son. Just you." In the parking lot, Noah hugged Graham's legs impulsively before getting into Alara's car. "Bye, Dad." The word, so simple and yet so monumental, nearly brought Graham to his knees. He watched them drive away, his hand still tingling from his son's touch. His phone buzzed. Probably his mother again, or the office, or one of a dozen corporate emergencies that usually consumed his life. But for the first time, those things felt insignificant compared to the miracle he'd just experienced. Being called Dad by a little boy who loved space and had his eyes. In his car, Graham found himself opening his calendar app. He moved meetings, rearranged conferences, and blocked out every Saturday afternoon for the foreseeable future. Then he did something else. He researched Jupiter, its moons, and that centuries-old storm that his son found so fascinating. Because next time Noah wanted to talk about space, Graham would be ready. Ready to listen, ready to learn, ready to be the father that this remarkable little boy deserved, ready to be worthy of that precious word, Dad. The corporate world could wait. For the first time in his life, Graham Alexander Whitaker had found something more important than success, more valuable than power, more essential than his mother's approval. He had found his son, and he was never letting go again. Saturday. Morning dawned clear and crisp, a perfect autumn day in Boston. Graham arrived at the Museum of Science 30 minutes early, pacing the entrance plaza as families streamed past. He'd spent hours researching the planetary exhibition, determined to engage meaningfully with Noah's interests. His phone buzzed, a text from Alara. Running 10 minutes late, Noah insisted on bringing his space notebook. Graham smiled, already familiar with the beloved notebook where Noah recorded his scientific observations. He'd learned more about his son in the past few days through careful questions to Alara. Each detail was precious. Noah's favorite dinosaur, Stegosaurus, his bedtime, 7:30 p.m., his habit of humming while he drew. Dad. The call made Graham's heart leap. Noah ran toward him, backpack bouncing, Alara following at a more measured pace. The boy wore a blue sweater with planets embroidered on it, and Graham noticed his shoelaces were patterned with stars. "Hey, buddy." Graham knelt to Noah's level, something he'd read about in one of the parenting books he'd devoured this week. "Ready to explore space?" Noah nodded enthusiastically, already unzipping his backpack to show his notebook. "I made a list of questions about Mars. Did you know it has 2 moons? They're called Phobos and Deimos, and—" "Let's get inside first," Alara suggested gently. She looked lovely in casual jeans and a burgundy sweater, her curls loose around her shoulders. "Remember to pace yourself, honey." Graham caught her meaning. Noah's excitement could sometimes trigger his asthma. Your mom's right. We have all day to explore. They got their tickets, Graham insisting on paying despite Alara's protest. As they entered the main hall, Noah between them, Graham felt an unfamiliar sensation. Contentment. This was how it should have been all along. The planetary exhibition was spectacular, with interactive displays and real meteorite samples. Noah moved from exhibit to exhibit, his enthusiasm infectious as he shared facts about each planet. Graham found himself genuinely fascinated, not just by the information but by the way his son's mind worked, analytical and imaginative at once. Look, Noah pressed his face against a display case containing a reddish rock. That's the real piece of Mars. It came from a meteorite that landed in Antarctica. Actually, a cultured voice cut in, it's from the Sahara Desert. Really, dear, you should verify your facts. Graham's blood ran cold. He knew that voice. Turning, he found himself face to face with his mother. Evelyn Whitaker stood there in an expensive cashmere ensemble, her perfectly coiffed hair and diamond earrings distinctly out of place among the casual weekend crowd. Behind her, Graham spotted her driver hovering uncertainly. Mother. Graham's voice was tight. What are you doing here? I had to see for myself. Evelyn's eyes fixed on Noah, who had instinctively moved closer to Alara. When you missed the foundation meeting this morning, which we need to discuss, by the way, I had Jenkins tell me where you'd be. Graham made a mental note to fire Jenkins first thing Monday morning. Mrs. Whitaker. Alara's voice was coolly professional, her arm protectively around Noah. This isn't the time or place. Evelyn's gaze swept over Alara dismissively before returning to Noah. Her expression softened slightly. Well, there's no denying those eyes. He is a Whitaker, through and through. We'll need to discuss his education, of course. Phillips Academy has an excellent primary program. No. Graham's voice cut through the air like a blade. You don't get to do this. Not here. Not ever. Don't be dramatic, darling. I'm simply thinking of the boy's future. Surely you don't intend to leave him in public school. And those clothes, we can do better than department store planets. Noah's fingers clutched his notebook tighter, his other hand finding Alara's. Graham saw the hurt in his son's eyes, and something inside him snapped. Outside, he growled. Now. Graham. Alara started, but he touched her arm gently. It's okay. Take Noah to see the Mars rover exhibit. I'll handle this. In the courtyard, Graham rounded on his mother. How dare you? How dare I what? Take an interest in my grandson's welfare? Really, Graham, you're being unreasonable. That woman, Graham's voice shook with fury, is Noah's mother. She has raised him beautifully, given him everything he needs, and made him into an amazing little boy. A little boy you just hurt with your thoughtless comments about his clothes and his school. I merely suggested, no, you tried to control, to remake him into your image of what a Whitaker should be, just like you did to me. Graham stepped closer. But here's what you need to understand, Mother. I won't let you do to Noah what you did to me. I won't let you make him feel like he's never good enough, never quite perfect enough for the almighty Whitaker name. Everything I did was for you, Evelyn protested. To give you the best. The best what? The best empty life? The best lonely existence? I lost the love of my life because of you. I missed 5 years of my son's life because I was too weak to stand up to you. But that ends now. His mother's face hardened. If you think I'll stand by while you throw away everything we've built, you don't have a choice. Graham's voice was deadly quiet. Because if you ever try to interfere with Noah or Alara again, I will walk away from everything. The company, the foundation, all of it. I'll start over from scratch if I have to, but I will not let you poison my son's life the way you poisoned mine. You wouldn't dare. Try me. Graham pulled out his phone, pulling up his banking app. With a few taps, he transferred a significant sum to a new account. Consider that my resignation fund. Cross me on this, Mother, and I'll use it. Evelyn stared at him, really seeing him perhaps for the first time in years. You've changed. Yes, because for the first time in my life I have something worth fighting for. Graham straightened to his full height. Now leave, and don't come near my family again without an invitation. Inside, he found Ilara and Noah in the Mars exhibit. Noah was quieter now, his earlier excitement dimmed. The sight made Graham's chest ache. Hey, buddy. He knelt beside his son. I'm sorry about that. Sometimes grown-ups, sometimes we forget what's really important. Noah looked up at him solemnly. Your mom doesn't like my sweater. Your sweater is awesome, Graham said firmly. And you know what? I learned more about space from you today than I ever learned in fancy schools. You're perfect, exactly as though you are. Noah's smile returned slowly. Really? Really? Graham touched the planets embroidered on Noah's sweater. Now, how about you tell me more about that Mars rover? I heard it sings itself happy birthday every year up there. All alone. On Mars. Pretty cool, right? As Noah launched into an explanation, his enthusiasm rekindling, Graham felt Ilara's hand brush his shoulder, a brief touch of understanding, and perhaps something more. Later, over ice cream in the museum cafe, Noah worked on his space drawings, while Graham and Ilara sat in companionable silence. Thank you, she said finally, for standing up to her. I should have done it years ago. Graham watched Noah carefully color a red spot on his Jupiter drawing. I won't let her hurt him like she hurt us. Ilara's eyes met his, full of memories and maybe, just maybe, a hint of hope. Us? Before Graham could respond, Noah proudly held up his drawing. Look, I drew us in a rocket ship going to visit Jupiter. The picture showed 3 stick figures in a crayon spaceship, one tall with black hair, one with curly brown hair, and a small one in the middle, holding both their hands. Graham felt tears prick his eyes, because there it was, in the pure vision of a child's art, the family they could have been, the family they might still become. If only he was brave enough to reach for it. Monday morning brought chaos to Whitaker Industries. Graham's firing of Jenkins had sent shockwaves through the corporate office, but it was his mother's absence from the Foundation's weekly meeting that really set tongues wagging. The great Evelyn Whitaker, missing a social engagement. Unprecedented. Graham ignored the whispers, focused on the photo now framing on his desk. Noah at the museum, eyes bright with excitement as he explained the Mars exhibit. The image captured his son's passionate spirit perfectly. Mr. Whitaker? His new assistant, Andrea Chen, appeared in the doorway. The Shanghai team is waiting for the video call. Push it back an hour, Graham said, checking his phone. A text from Ilara had just come in. Noah's school called. His asthma's acting up, not severe, but he was already standing, gathering his coat. Actually, clear my schedule for the morning. Family emergency. Andrea's eyebrows rose slightly, but she nodded. Unlike Jenkins, she seemed to understand the concept of discretion. 20 minutes later, Graham strode into Brighton Elementary's front office. Ilara was already there, speaking quietly with the school nurse. Noah sat nearby, his breathing labored but not dangerously so. Dad. Noah's face lit up despite his discomfort. The school nurse looked startled, glancing between Graham and Ilara. Graham realized this was probably the first time most people at Noah's school had seen his father. Hey, buddy. Graham knelt beside Noah's chair. Rough morning? Noah nodded, clutching his inhaler. The class was playing soccer. I wanted to keep up. He knows better, Ilara said, but her tone was more worried than angry. Noah, honey, you have to take breaks when... I just wanted to be normal, Noah whispered. The words hit Graham like a physical blow. He thought of his mother's dismissive comments about Noah's clothes, his school, his life. Had they affected the boy more deeply than they'd realized? Look at me, Noah. Graham waited until those familiar blue-gray eyes met his. You are normal. You're also extraordinary. Having asthma doesn't change that. It just means you have to be smarter about how you do things. And you know what? Being smart is your superpower. Noah's breathing seemed to ease slightly. Like how astronauts have to be smart about their oxygen in space? Exactly. Graham smiled, relieved to see his son's natural curiosity resurface. They can't just run around using up all their air, right? They have to plan carefully. I've been telling him that for ages, Alara murmured, but there was no resentment in her voice. If anything, she sounded grateful. The nurse cleared her throat. His breathing is stabilizing, but he should probably go home and rest. I'll take him, Graham and Alara said simultaneously. They looked at each other, years of unspoken feelings passing between them in that moment. We could both. Graham started carefully. Yes, Alara agreed. Noah should rest, and we need to talk anyway. They signed Noah out, Graham carrying his son's backpack while Alara held Noah's hand. In the parking lot, Noah looked between their two cars uncertainly. How about we all go in my car? Graham suggested. We can pick up Mom's car later. The drive to Alara's apartment was quiet, Noah dozing in the back seat while soft classical music played on the radio. Graham followed Alara's directions through a pleasant, middle-class neighborhood, noting the parks and libraries nearby. She'd chosen well for their son. Alara's apartment was on the second floor of a well-maintained building. Inside, Graham was struck by how perfectly the space reflected both Alara and Noah. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with medical texts and children's science books. A solar system mobile hung in the living room. Noah's artwork decorated the refrigerator. You can put him in his room, Alara said softly as Noah drowsed against Graham's shoulder. Second door on the left. Noah's room was a child's dream of space exploration. Glow-in-the-dark stars dotted the ceiling in accurate constellation patterns. A telescope stood by the window. Model rockets and planets hung from carefully arranged strings. Graham laid Noah gently on his bed, decorated with cosmic patterned sheets. As he pulled off his son's shoes, he noticed they were scuffed at the toes. Noah had been growing. He needs new sneakers, he murmured when he rejoined Alara. In the living room. I know. She handed him a cup of coffee. She still remembered how he took it. He's growing so fast lately. They sat on the couch, a careful distance between them. Through the open door they could hear Noah's breathing, now steady and calm. Thank you for coming today, Alara said finally. It meant a lot to him, to both of us. I meant what I said yesterday about my mother. Graham set his coffee down. I've arranged for new security protocols at his school. She won't be able to just show up there. It's not just her showing up I'm worried about. Alara tucked her legs under her, a familiar gesture that made Graham's heart ache. It's her influence. The way she gets into people's heads, the way she got into yours. Not anymore. Graham's voice was firm. I've spent the past 6 years trying to be the son she wanted. But being Noah's father, it's teaching me how to be the man I should have been all along. Alara studied him thoughtfully. You've changed. Having your world turned upside down will do that. He smiled slightly. Finding out you have a brilliant son who loves space and has your smile, it puts things in perspective. He does have my smile, Alara agreed softly. But he has your determination, your focus, the way he tackles a problem and won't let go until he understands it completely. That's all you. I want to be more involved, Graham said carefully. Not just for emergencies or weekend visits. I want to be there, for the everyday moments too. The homework, the doctor's appointments, the shopping for new sneakers. That would mean seeing a lot more of each other. The words hung between them, heavy with possibility. Graham turned to face her fully. Would that be so terrible? Alara's breath caught. Graham, I know we agreed this isn't about us, he said quickly. And it's not. It's about giving Noah the family he deserves, but Alara. He hesitated, then continued. Watching you with him. seeing what an amazing mother you are, how you've built this wonderful life for him. It makes me realize what I gave up 6 years ago, what I threw away because I was too weak to fight for it. We can't go back, Ilara whispered, but her eyes were bright with unshed tears. No, but maybe we can go forward, build something new, something better. For Noah's sake, of course, but also... A small noise from Noah's room interrupted them. They both rose instantly, parental instincts in sync. Noah was sitting up in bed, blinking sleepily. "Can we have soup?" he asked. "The star-shaped pasta kind?" "Of course, baby." Ilara smoothed his hair. "Dad can stay for lunch if he wants." Noah smiled at Graham hopefully. "Will you? And maybe you can help me with my space project? We're learning about constellations and I have to make my own and tell its story." Graham met Ilara's eyes over their son's head. In that moment, he saw their own constellation forming. 3 stars finding their orbit around each other. New patterns emerging from old light. "I'd love to," he said softly. "I'd love to stay." 3 weeks of relative peace had lulled them into a false sense of security. Graham had fallen into a comfortable routine. Breakfast with Noah and Ilara twice a week, school pickups on Wednesdays, weekend adventures that always seemed to end with the 3 of them sharing meals and laughter. It felt natural right until the storm hit. "Mr. Whitaker?" Andrea's voice crackled through his office intercom. "There's something you need to see." Graham looked up from the report he'd been reviewing, Noah's latest asthma assessment from Dr. Rodriguez. "What is it?" Andrea appeared in his doorway, tablet in hand. The Boston Globe's website, it just went live 10 minutes ago. The headline made his blood run cold. "Whitaker Air Scandal, CEO's secret love child revealed." Below it was a photo of Noah at school, clearly taken with a telephoto lens side by side with an old photo of Graham at the same age. The resemblance was undeniable. Graham's phone rang immediately. "Ilara." "Have you seen it?" Her voice was tight with controlled panic. "I'm looking at it now." Graham's hands clenched into fists. "I'll have my lawyers." "Forget your lawyers. There are reporters outside Noah's school. The principal just called. He's scared, Graham. Our son is scared." Our son. Any other time those words would have thrilled him. Now they just heightened his fury. "I'm on my way. Don't talk to anyone. I'll handle this." But when he reached for his coat, his private line rang. The number was blocked, but he knew who it was. "Hello, Mother." "Darling." Evelyn's voice was smooth as aged whiskey. "I trust you've seen the news. Did you do this?" "Please." She sounded offended. "I would never expose family matters so crudely. But since it's out there, we should discuss damage control. I've already called the board." Graham cut her off. "The only damage I'm controlling is the damage to my son's privacy. Stay out of this, Mother. I mean it." He hung up and turned to Andrea. "Get me Maxwell Rivera from legal. Have him meet me at Brighton Elementary and find out who leaked this story." The scene at Noah's school was chaos. Reporters clustered at the gates, held back by security. Graham spotted Ilara's car in the parking lot and pulled in beside it. Inside the principal's office, he found Noah curled in Ilara's lap, face buried in her neck. Lucia, whom Graham had met at several of Noah's doctor's appointments, stood guard by the door like an angry lioness. "Daddy?" Noah's voice was small. Graham's heart broke. Gone was the confident little boy who loved explaining space facts. This Noah seemed younger, vulnerable. "Hey, buddy." He knelt beside them. "I'm sorry about all the crazy people outside. They're just very interested in our family." "Because you're rich and important?" Noah asked with devastating directness. "That's what Tyler said at recess. He said I was only pretending to like space because you're my dad now." Graham felt Ilara stiffen. They'd been so careful to keep Noah's routine normal, to prevent exactly this kind of fallout. "Noah Sebastian Monroe Whitaker," Graham said firmly, using his son's full name for the first time. "You loved space long before I came along. You're the one who taught me about Jupiter's moons and Mars rovers, remember? Never let anyone tell." You what you love or who you are. The principal cleared his throat. Mr. Whitaker, Ms. Monroe, we need to discuss security arrangements, and there's the matter of several private schools that have already called with scholarship offers. No, Elara cut in. Noah stays here, with his friends, his teachers, his normal life. Of course, Graham agreed immediately. But we do need better security. He turned as Maxwell Rivera entered, looking sharp in his legal armor. Max, what are our options? The next hour was a blur of legal terms and protective measures. Restraining orders against photographers, media statements crafted to bore rather than inflame, security protocols that would protect without suffocating. The story will die down, Max assured them. But you might want to consider getting ahead of it. A controlled interview, perhaps. People love a good father meets long-lost child story. No interviews, Graham and Elara said simultaneously. Noah had fallen asleep, exhausted by the stress. Graham watched him breathe, remembering how fragile that breath could become when he was stressed. He can't go back to class today, Elara said softly. Not with that circus outside. Come to my place, Graham suggested. It's secure, private. We can figure this out without an audience. Elara hesitated, but Noah stirred restlessly in her arms. Okay, but just for today. Graham's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a luxury building with discreet security and a private elevator. He'd never brought Noah here before. It had seemed too soon, too loaded with implications. Now, watching his son wake up and take in the wall of windows overlooking Boston Harbor, Graham wished he'd done it sooner. Noah's eyes widened at the view. You can see the whole sky from here. Wait until night, Graham said without thinking. The stars are amazing. Elara shot him a look. They hadn't discussed sleepovers yet. But Noah was already exploring, his natural curiosity overtaking his earlier distress. Dad, you have a telescope too. The professional-grade telescope had been a recent purchase, inspired by Noah's passion. Graham had been waiting for the right moment to share it. Want to learn how to use it? For the next hour, they lost themselves in astronomy. Graham showed Noah how to adjust the settings, while Elara ordered lunch and fielded calls from concerned friends and colleagues. It was almost normal, almost perfect, until Graham's private elevator chimed. That's impossible, he said, rising. Security knows not to. But Evelyn Whitaker had always considered herself above mere security protocols. She stepped out of the elevator like a queen entering her court. Really, darling? Ignoring my calls? Now that this is public, we need to... She trailed off, taking in the scene. Noah's backpack by the sofa, Elara's medical journals spread across the coffee table, the half-eaten lunch on the dining table. What is this? Her voice could have frozen mercury. This is my family, Graham said quietly. The family you tried to keep me from. The family I choose. Family. Evelyn's laugh was brittle. This woman who hid your child from you, who's probably after your money. Stop. Graham's voice cracked like thunder. You don't get to come into my home and insult the mother of my child. Not ever again. Noah appeared in the doorway to the study, clutching his space notebook. Dad, is everything okay? The silence that followed was deafening, because there, framed in the doorway, was living proof of everything Evelyn Whitaker had tried to deny. A perfect blend of Graham and Elara, of power and compassion, of privilege and authenticity. Noah. Evelyn's voice softened slightly. You're leaving, Graham interrupted. You're leaving, Mother, and this time don't come back until you understand what family really means. After she left, the silence felt heavy. Noah looked between his parents uncertainly. Can we go back to learning about the telescope? The simple request broke the tension. Graham laughed, a real laugh that seemed to surprise even him. Of course we can, buddy. In fact, he met Elara's eyes. Maybe you and Mom would like to stay for dinner? We could order pizza, and when it gets dark, I'll show you both how to find the constellation you invented for your school project. Can we, Mom? Noah's eyes lit up. Please? Ilara looked at their son. Their brilliant, resilient son who'd handled this day with more grace than any 5-year-old should have to muster. Then she looked at Graham, who'd finally chosen them over everything else. Yes, she said softly. We can stay. Because sometimes, in the midst of life's storms, you find your true north. Sometimes the very chaos that threatens to tear you apart actually shows you what's worth holding on to. And sometimes, watching your child learn about stars through his father's telescope, you realize that some loves are stronger than pride, stronger than hurt, stronger even than time itself. That pizza dinner turned into breakfast, which turned into another dinner and another. Before anyone quite realized it, Graham's penthouse had become their sanctuary from the media storm, a space where they could just be a family. 2 weeks. After the news broke, Graham sat in his home office watching Noah do homework at his desk. The boy had claimed a corner of Graham's massive mahogany desk, his space books and colored pencils scattered across quarterly reports. Dad? Noah looked up from his assignment. What's bigger, Jupiter's great red spot or Earth? The storm is about twice Earth's size, Graham answered automatically. He'd been studying space facts religiously, determined to keep up with his son's interests. That's what I thought. Noah scribbled in his notebook. Mom, did you hear that? Ilara appeared in the doorway, still in her scrubs from her hospital shift. She'd started keeping spare clothes at the penthouse, for convenience, she said, though Graham noticed she chose the drawer he'd always left empty in his bedroom. I heard. She smiled, dropping a kiss on Noah's head. But homework first, space facts later, remember? Graham watched them, his heart full. These casual moments of domestic harmony had become precious to him. Noah's textbooks mixed with his business files, Ilara's medical journals on his coffee table, their son's laughter echoing through rooms that had once been silent and cold. The board meeting went well? Ilara asked quietly as Noah returned to his math problems. Graham nodded. The media frenzy had actually worked in his favor, humanizing him to investors. His public acknowledgement of Noah, his fierce protection of his son's privacy, and his obvious devotion to fatherhood had transformed his image from cold corporate titan to sympathetic family man. The Shanghai deal is final, he said. But I've restructured my schedule. No more international travel without discussing it with you first. Noah's needs come before business. Ilara's eyes softened. You really have changed. You both changed me. Graham glanced at their son, who was now humming softly as he worked, a habit he'd inherited from Ilara. I never knew what I was missing until... A knock interrupted. Them. Andrea stood in the doorway looking apologetic. Mr. Whitaker, the developers for the new Children's Hospital wing are here for the final approval meeting. Graham had almost forgotten. The pediatric wing expansion, a project he'd initiated, after learning about Noah's frequent hospital stays, was nearly complete. Send them to the conference room. He turned to Noah. Hey buddy, want to see something cool? These people are building a special part of the hospital just for kids like you. Noah's eyes lit up. Can I show them my ideas? I drew pictures of what a space hospital would look like. Graham met Ilara's gaze, seeking permission. She nodded, amused. Just remember your inhaler if you get excited. The developers, serious men and women in expensive suits, were not prepared for Hurricane Noah. The 5-year-old burst into the conference room with his notebook, full of crayon drawings showing hospital rooms decorated with stars and planets. See? Noah pointed to his drawings. The ceiling could look like the real sky, and the machines could make space noises instead of beeping. And look, the doctors could wear spacesuits instead of boring white coats. To Graham's surprise, the lead architect actually looked interested. The ambient lighting concept could work, and themed medical equipment might help reduce anxiety in young patients. The psychological impact of environment on pediatric recovery rates is well documented, Ilara added, her nurse's expertise showing. Noah's ideas might seem fanciful, but the principle is sound. Graham watched his son explain his vision, supported by his mother's professional insights. In that moment, he saw not just his family, but his legacy. Not the cold corporate empire his mother had envisioned, but something warmer, more human. A place where business and compassion could coexist. After the meeting, Noah crashed on the office sofa, tired but happy. Alara tucked a blanket around him, one of several that had migrated from her apartment to the penthouse. "He's going to change the world someday," Graham said softly. "He already has." Alara touched Noah's cheek, gently. "He changed ours." The setting sun painted the office in soft gold, and Graham was struck by how right this felt. His son sleeping peacefully, Alara's presence filling the spaces that had always been empty, the life he should have had all along. "Move in with me," he said suddenly. Alara's hand stilled on Noah's blanket. "What?" "Both of you. Move in here. We're here most of the time anyway. Noah loves the view, the space for his projects. You wouldn't have to commute so far to the hospital. We could—" "Graham." Alara's voice was gentle but firm. "We can't just—" "Why not?" He moved closer, careful not to wake Noah. "Give me one reason that isn't about the past. One reason that isn't about fear." "Because—" Alara struggled, then sighed. "Because I'm still in love with you, and that terrifies me." The confession hung in the air between them. Graham's heart thundered in his chest. "It should terrify you," he said finally. "Because I'm still in love with you too. Never stopped, really. And this time I could lose so much more than just you. I could lose him too." "You won't." Alara's voice was fierce. "Whatever happens between us, you're Noah's father. That doesn't change. But everything else could change." Graham reached for her hand, encouraged when she didn't pull away. "Maybe for the better. We're not who we were 6 years ago, Alara. I'm not that weak man who let his mother rule his life. You're not that young woman who had to protect herself from being hurt. We've grown, evolved. Maybe it's time our relationship evolved too." Noah stirred slightly, mumbling something about Mars in his sleep. They both looked at their son, this miracle they'd created together. "One condition," Alara said finally. "We take it slow. We don't tell Noah we're exploring this until we're sure. He deserves stability." "Agreed." Graham squeezed her hand. "But about moving in—" "That's practical," Alara conceded. "For Noah's sake. The security here is better, and the school is actually closer, but I keep my apartment for now, as a safety net." "Whatever you need." Graham touched her cheek softly. "I'll wait, I'll prove myself, however long it takes." The sun had set fully now, stars appearing in the darkening sky. Noah would want to use the telescope when he woke up. Their son, who loved the stars, who dreamed of space, who had unknowingly drawn his parents back into each other's orbit. "Did, you know," Noah mumbled, half awake, "that some stars are actually two stars, so close together they look like one?" Graham and Alara exchanged glances, wondering how much he'd heard, but Noah just yawned and snuggled deeper into his blanket. "Binary stars," Graham said softly. "They orbit each other, neither one complete without the other." Ilara's fingers tightened around his. Outside, the city lights twinkled like earthbound stars, and somewhere in the vast night sky, Jupiter's great storm kept spinning, eternal and patient, just like love. 6 months later, Graham stood in the newly completed pediatric wing of Boston General, watching his son captivate an audience. Noah, now 6, was officially cutting the ribbon for the space-themed children's ward that had been inspired by his drawings. "And this," Noah explained to the gathered donors and press, his small voice clear and confident, "is the galaxy room where kids can watch the stars while they get their medicine. Because space makes everything better." Beside Graham, Alara squeezed his hand. She wore an elegant blue dress for the occasion, though her hospital ID still hung around her neck. She'd insisted on remaining hands-on with patient care despite her recent promotion to Director of Pediatric Nursing. "He's a natural," Dr. Rodriguez remarked, watching Noah point out the constellations painted on the ceiling. just like his father with presentations, but with his mother's heart. Graham's throat tightened with emotion. The past 6 months had been transformative. Noah had flourished, his asthma better controlled, his confidence growing. The media interest had faded, replaced by genuine admiration for the family's philanthropy and dedication to children's health care. Even Evelyn had begun to change. After 3 months of silence, she'd appeared at the penthouse one Sunday morning, not to criticize but to listen. She'd sat quietly as Noah explained the solar system, actually smiling when he corrected her astronomy facts. It was a small step, but a significant one. And now, Noah was saying, my grandma is helping other kids like me get special doctors for their breathing problems. The Whitaker Foundation's new focus on pediatric respiratory care had been Evelyn's olive branch. Perhaps she couldn't undo the past, but she could help shape a better future. Dad, Noah called out, can you tell them about the special equipment? The one that looks like a spaceship? Graham stepped forward, lifting Noah onto his hip, a gesture that now felt as natural as breathing. The new pulmonary function testing unit does look a bit like a spaceship, doesn't it, buddy? But more importantly, it'll help doctors understand exactly how to help kids breathe better. As Graham explained the technical details to the donors, he felt Ilara's presence beside him, steady and sure. They'd moved in together 3 months ago, though she'd kept her apartment as promised. But last week she'd quietly begun packing it up. Neither had mentioned it directly, but they both knew what it meant. And now, the hospital administrator announced, we invite you all to the reception in the new family lounge. The crowd moved, away, leaving the family alone in the galaxy room. Noah wiggled down from Graham's arms, running to the window seat designed to his specifications. Can we stay here a minute? He asked. I want to show you something. Graham and Ilara exchanged glances, then joined their son on the cushioned window seat. Outside, the Boston skyline glittered in the early evening light. I made this for you, Noah said, pulling a slightly crumpled paper from his pocket. For both of you. It was a drawing, more sophisticated than his earlier works. It showed the three of them standing under a starry sky, but this time they weren't in a rocket ship. They were in front of a house, a detailed rendering of Graham's penthouse, complete with the telescope on the balcony. It's our home, Noah explained. All of us together, forever. Ilara's breath caught. They hadn't told Noah about her moving in permanently, wanting to be certain before disrupting his world. Again, see? Noah pointed to the stars he'd drawn. That's the constellation I invented. Remember when I had to make one for school? I called it Familia Nova, new family, because that's what we are. Graham met Ilara's eyes over their son's head. In them he saw the same love, hope, and certainty he felt in his own heart. Noah, Ilara said softly, how would you feel if we made this official? If Mom and her things moved in with you and Dad permanently? Noah's face lit up. Really? You mean it? Really, Graham confirmed. If that's what you want. But that's not all, Ilara continued, her voice trembling slightly. How would you feel if Mom and Dad got married again? Graham's heart stopped. They hadn't discussed this, hadn't planned it. But looking at Ilara now, he knew it was right. They'd spent 6 months rebuilding trust, relearning each other, creating something stronger than what they'd had before. Noah looked between them, his expression serious. Would everything change? No, buddy, Graham assured him. We'd still be us, still have our space talks and telescope nights, still be a family. We'd just be making it official, like you said in your drawing. And we'd never do it without making sure you're okay with it, Ilara added. Noah considered this with characteristic thoroughness. Would we still live here? With the telescope? And the stars? Yes, they answered together. And would Grandma still come for Sunday breakfast? She's getting better at space facts. Graham smiled. Yes, if you want her to. And would we still help other kids at the hospital? Because I have more ideas for the space rooms. Always, Ilara promised. That's part of who we are now. Noah nodded solemnly. Then I think it's a good idea. Because you know what I learned about stars? Sometimes they look separate, but they're actually binary stars always meant to be together. Like you said, Dad, remember? Graham pulled both Noah and Ilara close, his family finally complete in his arms. Through the window, the first stars of evening were appearing, including Jupiter, bright and steady in the darkening sky. I have one condition, though, Noah added seriously. What's that, baby? Ilara asked. Can we have the wedding in the galaxy room? And can I wear my NASA tie? Graham laughed, the sound full of joy and promise. I think that's perfect. After all, it was space that brought us back together. No, Ilara corrected gently, touching Noah's cheek. It was love. Love and a little boy who saw the universe in everything. Outside, a shooting star streaked across the sky, a cosmic punctuation mark to their moment of perfect alignment. Noah gasped in delight, but Graham and Ilara were looking only at each other, seeing in each other's eyes the same truth. Sometimes love takes a roundabout path through the stars. Sometimes you have to lose your way to find your true constellation, and sometimes, if you're very lucky, the universe gives you a second chance to make things right, not just for yourself, but for the beautiful, brilliant child who drew your hearts back together with crayon stars and endless dreams of space. I love you, Graham whispered, the words meant for both his son and the woman who'd given him this second chance at happiness. To infinity? Noah asked, using their new favorite phrase. And beyond, Ilara completed, her smile as bright as any star. Because some loves are written in the stars. Some families are destined to find their way back to each other. And some stories, like the great storms of Jupiter, keep spinning through time and space until they find their perfect ending. Not in the cold reaches of outer space, but in the warm embrace of a family finally, beautifully, cosmically complete. 1 year later. The observation deck of the Museum of Science buzzed with quiet excitement as a small crowd gathered for a private event. Noah, now 7, stood proudly next to his new high-powered telescope, a joint gift from his parents and grandmother for his role in tonight's presentation. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Rodriguez announced to the assembled hospital board members and donors, I present our youngest astronomy club mentor, Noah Monroe Whitaker. Noah stepped forward, confidence radiating from his small frame. He wore a miniature version of his father's suit, complete with his beloved NASA tie and his mother's warm smile. Welcome to the first meeting of the Children's Astronomy Health Initiative, he began, his voice clear and strong, where kids like me can learn about space while getting better. The program had been Noah's idea, combining his love of astronomy with helping other children managing chronic conditions. Every month, young patients from Boston General would gather here to stargaze, learn about space, and forget about their health challenges for a while. Graham stood at the back of the room, his arm around Ilara, who now wore not just her hospital ID but also a diamond ring that caught the starlight streaming through the observatory's dome. Their own wedding 6 months ago had indeed taken place, in the galaxy room, with Noah playing the dual role of best man and ring bearer. Look, Noah pointed excitedly through his telescope. You can see Jupiter's moons tonight. Did you know that Jupiter's great red spot is starting to change color? Scientists think it might be because... As their son launched into his explanation, Ilara leaned into Graham's embrace. He's still teaching us something new every day. Just like his mother, Graham murmured, kissing her temple. Evelyn Whitaker, seated in the front row, beamed with genuine pride as her grandson fielded questions from the audience. She'd found her own redemption in supporting Noah's vision, turning the Whitaker Foundation's considerable resources toward children's healthcare initiatives. After the presentation, the family gathered on the observation deck. Noah was showing a young patient in a wheelchair how to focus the telescope, his gentle patience pure Ilara. Dad, Mom, come look, he called. You can see our constellation. They joined him at the telescope, and sure enough, there shone the stars of Familia Nova, now officially recognized by the International Astronomical Union through a special educational initiative. The certificate hung proudly in Noah's room, right next to the crayon drawing that had started it all. "You know what else is special about tonight?" Noah asked, his eyes twinkling with a secret. "What's that, buddy?" Graham asked. "I'm going to be a big brother soon, right?" Alara gasped softly, her hand moving instinctively to her stomach. They hadn't told anyone yet. The news was barely a week old. "How did you—" she started. Noah grinned. "You've been drinking ginger tea instead of coffee, just like my friend, Ashley's mom, before she had a baby, and Dad's been extra careful about your lifting things at home. Plus," he added with impeccable logic, "our constellation has room for one more star." Graham laughed, pulling both Noah and Alara close. "You really don't miss anything, do you?" "Nope." Noah looked up at the stars. "I think it's a girl. Then she can be like the smaller moons of Jupiter, just as important as the big ones, but in her own special way." Through the observatory's dome, Jupiter shone bright and steady, its eternal storm a reminder that some of the universe's most beautiful things come from chaos. Just like their family had emerged from the storms of the past, stronger and more beautiful than before. "To infinity?" Noah asked, starting their familiar phrase. "And beyond," his parents responded together, their voices blending under the vast canopy of stars. Because some endings are really just new beginnings. Some families grow stronger with each challenge. And some love stories don't end with happily ever after. They just keep expanding like the universe itself, infinite in their capacity for joy, growth, and discovery. Up in the night sky, the stars of Familia Nova twinkled brightly, marking the path home for a family that had found its way not just to each other, but to a love as vast and endless as space itself. Have you ever lived a love story that took you all the way around the sun to find your true destiny? Just like Graham and Alara, who had to wait 6 years and the innocent wisdom of a child to rediscover that some loves are written in the stars. Do you believe that there are loves that never die? They just wait for the right moment to rekindle, like the constellations that always return to the same point in the sky. Your participation in the channel is very important. Please leave your opinion in the comments. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the story, please subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below letting us know what you thought. Your feedback and support mean a lot to us. Stay tuned for more exciting stories.